in next 2 to 3 minutes, so let's just wait. My screen, let me know when it is visible. Okay, I hope you can see the screen. And in today's session, we are going to discuss about how to basically use the linking words. For those of you who are not aware of what a linking word is basically it's a word, it's a phrase, or it's basically a connector that is used to connect two kinds of sentences. Linkers or connectors, they're all synonymously used. So let's dig in. Let me just share this. I hope you all can see the screen already. I'm just going to start the slideshow. Okay. All right. So let's begin. Okay, so linking word is basically the verbal glue which basically holds your ideas together. It works like any other glue that makes you makes whatever your conversations are like, it makes sense to that. And also whenever you're trying to connect two kinds of sentences, it is next to quintessential that you use these kinds of linkers. So when we talk about IELTS, using linkers is paramount because when you make use of linking words, they make your ideas come more organized and they help you in order to explain yourself better. So that is the reason why linking words, which are also called the transition words, they are used for achieving a higher band scores in the IELTS writing and the speaking section. If you do not trust me, you can definitely go ahead and look for the public band scores, both for speaking and for writing. There's going to be a specific use of linkers under lexical resource and sometimes even under grammatical range and accuracy. So you can just definitely have a look and understand why linkers, transition words, or connectors are important. All right. So if I have to shorten it for you and tell you what is the exact reason why linkers are used, the first is they make the paragraph clear. In terms of paragraph, it does not really have to be restricted towards paragraph only. It makes your speech clear. It helps you to provide cohesion and coherence in terms of the writing task. The next is it helps you in illustrating how the parts or clauses of a text are connected. Of course, when you're trying to connect two sentences, you're going to use furthermore. When you're trying to give a contrast in terms of speaking, you will say having said that. It helps you to express your opinions and purpose on a point. The next is they help you in constructing a suitable conclusion, because in the writing section we are supposed to use these connectors like to conclude, to sum up. Again, this is a connector. Although it's a written connector, but there definitely are more connectors for the speaking section as well. And you need to understand what are these connectors in order to better explain yourself. Now, there is, yes, definitely there is a bifurcation in terms of a writing connector and a speaking connector. You cannot really use a spoken connector for a written connector. Why? Because both of them will have a different meaning. For example, you will not say furthermore when you are speaking. A lot of people, they do actually use furthermore while expressing their points, but you need to understand that it is a written connector. So we don't say furthermore, we say having said that, we say to cite an example, we say apart from that. So basically, what I'm trying to insinuate is written connectors are very different from spoken connectors, and you need to know the distinct bifurcation that there exists, and then you need to make an understanding of how to use them um, in context. Okay. So when we start, we are going to begin with the linking words for IELTS speaking. So speaking is pretty generic. When you want to give more information, you can definitely use and also, furthermore, another reason, additional, moreover, in addition, as well as. These all of these connectors, they signify the same meaning, that you're going to add more information, you're going to definitely expound, you're definitely going to give you more, you're definitely going to add more insight to whatever your speech is. So that is the reason why you want to, whenever you want to give any extra piece of information, you would either say also, you would either say and, therefore, furthermore, another reason is, additional, moreover. So all of these connectors can be used synonymously. That means you don't really have to restrict yourself into using one kind of connector. You can definitely keep on adding more connectors. Having said that, remember that these connectors have to be used contextually. You cannot sprinkle words out of context. It needs to be incorporated with, and with a context. Without context, whatever linker you use, it will be considered inadequate, and that is the reason why you should know the exact meaning of these connectors. Okay. Now coming to the next one, whenever you're trying to give an opinion, just give me a second. Yes, whenever you're trying to give an opinion, you need to so, for example, in an opinion-based essay in the writing section, task 2, you have to be in agreement or in complete disagreement. So there you can use, in my opinion, I opine that, personally, I reckon, I think, I believe. When you want to agree to a particular stance, you would say, I completely agree, I couldn't agree more, I am of the complete agreement, I am with the complete agreement. So again, all of these words, they mean the same thing. That means that you are in sync with the statement. Now, when you want to go to the extremity of disagreeing, you can say, I disagree, I don't think so, I'm not sure about that, is a spoken connector, but definitely you can write it using, I could not disagree more. So again, all of these signify the same thing, that you're not in sync with what the statement is. And remember that in an opinion based essay, either you're going to be completely in sync, or you're going to completely against the notion. You cannot sit on the fence. You cannot, you cannot be of the thought process that I'm going to partially agree or disagree. Remember, in an opinion based essay where you have to give an opinion, it has to be either in perfect sync, or it has to be completely disagreement kind of an essay. Now, when you want to explain the reasons, whenever you want to give justification of something, let's say you got a statement that is very dichotomous in its term, that has a lot of dichotomy, and now you want to explain your reason for whatever your stance is. You can use because, you can use since, you can use as, you can use due to, you can use owing to the fact. And when you want to give examples, because again, examples are an indispensable part of your essays, you need to use them in the essay section, body 1 and body 2. So for there, you can definitely use, for example, to cite an example such as, for instance, I think this much, these are enough. Out of these 4, you just have to just use 2 of them, and that should suffice. And then a lot of people use like for examples. This is a completely wrong approach. You cannot use like, because like again is a spoken connector. For example, you can say there are a lot of people who really enjoy windy weather. Like for myself, I am somebody like that. So like is again a very informal connector, and you cannot use informal language in the essay. I hope it is clear. If you have any questions so far, you can ask. Okay, I am assuming there isn't any. Now, when we talk about time, okay, When we talk about time, we can definitely, now this is again a spoken connector. We don't really use time references in the essay. So here you can use at the moment, right now, at present, these days, nowadays, in the past, now, before, years ago, when I was younger. So again, remember, this is a spoken essay and this is a spoken linker and cannot be used as a written linker. And you need to know the clear dichotomy. You need to know the clear contrast between a writing linker and a spoken linker. The difference is that written linkers are a bit informal as opposed to written spoken linkers. That the spoken linkers needs to be again in context of what you're saying. That should definitely be maintained, and if you maintain that, you can use any of the linkers depending upon their context. Now, when you want to point out at contrasting ideas, contrast basically means two opposite ideas. Contrast is basically called dichotomy. In as a synonym, you can definitely use dichotomy, contrasting ideas. So, in contrast, you can use, on the other hand, you can use nonetheless, you can use nevertheless, you can use however, you can use. When you want to show an exception to the fact, you can definitely use except for the fact, and then you can add your point. Besides that, and then you can add a point. Having said that, again you can add a point. And this last one is for conclusion, which is pretty decent, pretty simple. In conclusion, to conclude, to sum up, finally, to reiterate, to deduce. These are some synonyms that you can use for the writing section too. Whenever you are asked to express an idea should be your personal belief. It should not be there to please the examiner, because if your point of focus would be to please the examiner, you might not agree with the point. But just because you want to be in sync with the examiner, you might just say yes for the heck of it. Don't do that until and unless your heart and soul believes in sync with the point. Then you can definitely agree. Otherwise, whatever stance you have, you can definitely say that. So now, when you are expressing ideas about something like an event, a place, etc., you can use these linkers. For example, I think one important thing is, or you can say, I reckon. Something which is very imperative is, you can say, one major disparity is, you can say, the main difference between X and Y is. Again, these are some linkers that you can use in order to show a contrast in your ideas. The next is contrast again, but you can use although, but, on the other hand, although, while, or. All of these needs to be used contextually. Again, you need to understand the context pretty well in order to use these kinds of linkers. The next one is causes and solutions. Causes and solutions kind of essay, they are not really something that you can expect always. Yes, out of the blue, sometimes once in a blue moon they might be asked. Otherwise, you would definitely get an opinion based essay or a non-opinion based essay in terms of advantage and disadvantage. Now, when we talk about the causes and effect of the kinds of the essay, the first is because, you can say, owing to, you can say, the best way to solve this is, I guess the only answer is, it was caused by. Again, see, all of these linkers, they can be used only when you know the context. And having an information about these kinds of linkers does not mean that you have to use them each time. You have to see the demand of the question. If then and there is a scope of you to use these kinds of linkers, definitely you should be more than willing to use and incorporate these linkers. Otherwise, you can just do without it. They can be called as redundant in terms when there is no context. Okay, so I hope that it is making sense to you. Now, coming to a speaking example, if the question is, do you think it is important to learn about history? Now, it is a very close-ended question. I hope you know the disparity between close-ended and open-ended questions. When it is a close-ended question, it means the scope of answer is either yes or no. But when it is an open-ended question, you can have an answer of any kind. For example, if I say, do you think a lot of people, or when I say, what do you think about technology? It is not a close-ended answer or a question, because you can say anything. You can think positive about technology, you can think negative about technology, you might think that technology might jeopardize your job. So again, it's an open-ended question and the answers are very vast. But if it is a close-ended question, it's going to be either yes or no. For example, here it says, do you think it is important to learn about history? Now you have to follow three rule, okay? In giving an answer, opinion, reason, and E. This is called ORE technique, where you give your opinion, you say either yes or no, then you give the reason behind your opinion, and then you back your answer up with an example. For example, here if you say, if you think, and again, this is an opinion based question, so you can definitely say, personally, I think learning history is extremely important. Or you can say, for me, or if I am considered, if my opinion is considered, I don't really regard learning history as an imperative thing. Why? Because it helps to understand our past and avoid making the same mistakes in the future. You can definitely say a man is made by the mistakes that he makes, and I feel that learning history is not important because man is a very agathic archaeological being, and he would keep on making mistakes. So again, depending upon what you sync with, depending upon whatever your idea is, you just need to follow these three rules. The first is opinion, the next is reason, and the last one is example. I hope it is pretty clear. Now, addition and conclusion is something which comes as bonus. I would say if you are done with opinion, reason, and example, that's enough. You don't really have to like bang your head against the wall and use all of these things. Just stick to the basics: opinion, reason, and example. So whatever question has been asked to you, first give the opinion, say yes or no, then give the reason behind your opinion, and then give an example to back up your opinion and the reasons. Okay. Now coming to the next one, tips to use linking words for IELTS speaking. Now, using a linking word is not enough in itself. You should use it with the correct context. Context is basically you use the word or a phrase or a sentence only when it is needed. You don't like throw, or you don't really puke the words just because you've learned it. So the first is, before using a linking word, it is important to understand its meaning and appropriate use. Of course, when you want to say yes and you don't really know the meaning of yes, you might end up saying no. So you need to know the meaning of the words. The next is, do not use formal linking words in simple sentences. For example, if the question is, do you like to go out? You don't really have to say, yes, I am completely sync with the idea that one should go or one should head out. Furthermore, I also align with the thought process that going out will definitely make you more active. It's not needed. So you don't have to use very formal vocabulary in the speaking section, and even the linkers that you use does not really or do not really have to be very formal. The next is, stay updated with new linking words as they contribute to fluency and coherence, which counts for your marks. Of course, with the advent of technology, the scope of its usage is pretty huge. So make sure that you're using the technology to its fullest. You can use internet to search for new linkers, and you can definitely learn them up and see when you can use them. The next is practice until the use of linking words feel natural and in the IELTS. Okay, fine. So now the thing is, just knowing the linking words is not enough. You should be able to use it at all time without any great effort. Okay, they should basically flow out of your mouth. Sometimes people, they use a new word and they learn a new word and they want to use it like anywhere and everywhere. For example, I remember one of my student, he wanted to show off the fact that he has learned the word fluoxetine heliplication. So he would not come directly to me and tell me that, I've learned this new word. He would just keep on using the word without any context. So I appreciated him for the fact that he knows this word. But I also made him sit down and realize that it is not important that if you know a particular vocabulary, you have to throw it everywhere. See the meaning and also see if it is sitting well with the statement. Okay. Now the next is, again, remember the linking word like is for speaking and not for IELTS writing module. A lot of people, they even write, I'm going to speak about the importance and the negatives of technology. Speak, it's an essay, so you're not speaking anything, you're not writing, you're not giving a speech there. So you definitely, whatever you're writing, you need to see what exactly does that mean. So this was about how to, use linking words in IELTS speaking. Any questions or any doubts so far? Anything that you want to ask? Okay. Silence is a sign that everything is understood. So we're going to move forward. The next is mistakes with the linking words for IELTS speaking. The first is, okay, let's just see an example over here. It says that I went to the store and I bought some groceries, but then I went to my friend's house. Also, we had lunch together because it was a sunny day. Now, and also feels very disjointed, and the answer, even though this has some English, but it is not correct because we use I went to the store and I bought some groceries may be correct. It is correct. But then I went to my friend's house. Also, we had lunch together because it was a sunny day. All of this is disjointed and does not really make a lot of sense. This is a problem that a lot of test takers face with. We literally translate Hindi to English. For example, मैं घर जाऊंगा. If you translate it to English, you will say I home go. But this is not how the grammar is to be followed. So if you are struggling with ideas, the first thing that you have to stop doing is completely cease translating Hindi to English, because a lot of words that we use in Hindi differs when we change them in English. For example, मैं सोने जा रहा हूँ. So I sleep going. If you translate it from Hindi to English, and it is definitely a major incorrect statement. So make sure that you're not translating any dialect into any other vernacular language. If it is English, you have to both think and speak in English. Okay. Now the next one, now let's come to the linking words for IELTS writing. It's pretty similar. You just have to learn these linking words. So whenever you want to show a connection between two ideas, you can either use moreover, you can use furthermore, and in addition. However, there's a difference between moreover and furthermore. If you can tell me the difference between moreover and furthermore, that means you guys are ace in terms of IELTS. The next is sequence of ideas. Sequence means in the essay you need to address the essay with sequential linkers. So when you start with the body one, you will write firstly, to begin with, to incite with, to embark on. Secondly, then you can use moreover. Lastly, you can use conclusion, to conclude, to reduce. So sequential ideas needs to be used with the correct form of the linkers as well. When you want to show cause and effect about something, again it's a very similar thing. You need to you definitely use it like where did it go? Because, due to, as a result, therefore. So definitely, again, you can use these things, and you have to use these kinds of linkers when you're speaking. The next is compare and contrast ideas. Words like however, on the other hand, like on one hand, on the other hand, on one side, on the flip side. These are to be used when you're talking about two extreme options. For example, advantage and disadvantage, causes and effect. You don't have to use on one hand, on the other hand in an opinion based essay, where all your essay is going to be a chronicle of you backing up your statement. So there you don't really have to use anywhere on one hand, on the other hand, because you're just going to give more light on the idea that you either agree or disagree. Okay, now coming to the next one. Whenever you're listing an idea, so you can definitely use firstly, secondly, thirdly, finally, lastly, last but not the least. Last but not the least is a spoken connector, so you don't have to write it in the written connector. The next is when you want to add more information, you will use additionally, furthermore, moreover, in addition, also. Not only this but also this, as well as. So again, not only this but also is again a spoken connector, so use it accordingly. The next one is giving examples. Of course, the essay is really incomplete if you do not include examples. So just you can say, for example, if you want to sound a little more profound, you can say, for instance. If you want to exuberate your fluency and your word choice even more, you can use to exemplify, or you can just use the monotonous such as. Okay. So, for example, minor crimes such as a traffic offense and pickpocketing should not have the same penalty as major crimes, namely murder and manslaughter. So, such as is used when you want to back up your answer with an example. So, you can learn this up and you can definitely use whenever you are giving an answer. The next is parents should be responsible for teaching good habits to their children. For example, if they see their child misbehaving, they should not spend time explaining to their child the serious consequences. Okay. If you have seen a very famous meme that is going about these days, there was this child who came on KBC and he was extremely narcissistic and extremely, a very hard nut to crack. Actually, he was just cutting Amitabh Bachchan in the middle of his sentences. He was being like, he was very condescending in his approach. So you can definitely use that as an example, that parents should be responsible for teaching good habits to their children. And again, it's very important that you use these examples, that you use these connectors. Otherwise, whatever you say will not make sense, as I've already told you. The next is results and consequences. When you want to explain the outcome of something, you use these kinds of connectors. For example, thus, hence, therefore, as a result, consequently, for this reason, subsequently. And when you are trying to show a contrast in opinion, you can use however, you can use nevertheless, you can use even though. So again, these are the connectors that you can use in both writing and speaking. So connectors are basically used in three types. The first is when you want to express an alternative or a contrasting idea. If it is spoken, then we say having said that. If it is written, we say in contrast. When you are giving an opinion, I already told you, you will say I agree, I disagree, I could not agree more, I could not disagree more, I completely disregard the fact. And then conclusion. In conclusion, you can use to conclude, to deduce, to reiterate, to summarize. So again, these are the connectors that you use. I want you to practice this linking words. If you have understood everything, this is a question and I want you to write what connectors can be used here. There are a number of drawbacks to people using Facebook as a way of communicating. Dash, it is dash, one of the most common social networking platforms for both individuals and businesses. I'm going to give you some time. If you want, you can write it in the chat box and see if you're using the connectors well or not. Of course, you can use a variety of connectors here and there, and the answer that I would share with you is a model answer. So maybe your answer might also be correct, but I want you to take an initiative. I will give you 2 to 3 minutes to give the answer, and then if you do, it's good. If not, then we shall proceed. So I'm going to give you exactly 2 minutes to write down the answer. All right, I will show you the answers now. So have a look. So even though admittedly due to, owing to, you can't have because of, because it is the beginning of a sentence, particularly, especially, specifically, despite, therefore, so, and for this reason. Again, these are the connectors. We might have not spoken about it, but generally some connectors can be used interchangeably, and you, again, it again shows the importance of connectors and the fact that you should definitely use it when you are writing the answers. Now, coming to the linkers or linking words for IELTS academic writing task 1, which is report writing. You have starting of a paragraph, you have some linking phrases, you have time expressions when you have to describe a process, and then you have to also use linkers when you are describing a map. Um, Question is, what is the right amount of linking words to be used in the IELTS writing? The answer is that you can use as many as you want. There is no hard and fast rule that only one linker should be used, or you cannot use more than two linkers. It's completely up to the mark, and it's completely up to you how many linkers that you want to use. However, make sure that you just don't go overboard with it and you're not using too many of it or you are not using too little of it. You need to maintain an equilibrium, and that is how the examiner will be able to test you based upon the way you use the vocabulary and how fluent you are with the phrases, as well as how well can you use grammar to its perfect sync. Now, if you are someone who is struggling with using linking words for IELTS writing and reading or speaking, what can be done? First is you should be able to make a list of all these linkers, then write down the meaning, exact verbatim meaning of these linkers, and try to learn it. Then when you start practicing, make sure that you are using the linkers as you write the essay, and you should be able to incorporate at least 3 to 4 linkers in each essay. That is how you will be able to use linkers in no time. The next is you should know that there is a complete, like there's a very clear distinction between written linker and spoken linker, and you must be able to know the clear disparity as well. Do not go overboard with the linkers. That means that if you have to use it, just don't use it for the same reason that you've been told to use them. You should know the meaning of these linkers and then you should use them as per the context. Okay, so any question or any doubts that you have, you can ask right now. If you did not understand anything, if there is a question that is there in your mind, then you can definitely ask. Okay, if there is no question, then we can definitely call it a day. And remember that if there is any time you're using a linker, make sure that you use it contextually. Make sure you should know the exact meaning of the linker. You are not writing another linker in place of another linker which is required, and if you do so, you'll be able to explain the essay better. Even for the report writing, if you know exactly what linker to be used, you will be able to use it in a better position. Right. With this, if you have any question, you can ask. Otherwise, we can definitely call it a day. Any question, any doubt? Okay, if everything is clear, then we can definitely call it a day. Can we use all the linkers in essay writing and speaking? You will not be able to use all the linkers, Aga, because um, maybe the question has no scope for you to contradict. So how are you going to contradict if there is no scope? So again, as I told you, and I especially mentioned that when you are writing a linker, it should serve the purpose of a linker. So if you are agreeing with the point, then why would you use a disagreement linker, right? So again, see what is the meaning. Are you in a position to use the linkers in terms of disagreement? Yes, then you can use a lot of disagreeing linkers as well. If not, then just stick to the positives, stick to the agreement linkers. But you should know the meaning of all kinds of linkers so that you are at a position to use them interchangeably. You are at a position to use vocabulary to its extreme best. So I hope that answers the question. Any other question or any other doubt that you have? All right, no worries. Any question or any doubt if you have, you can even book a demo with us again. It is free of cost and you don't really have to like pay anything to us. And if you are preparing for the IELTS and you want to have more clarity, or if there is any particular doubt that you want to be cleared, of course you can book a demo from us and it is free of cost and your doubts would be cleared there. So with this, if you don't have any question, then we can definitely call it a day. If you have any other doubts, please feel free to ask me. Mm. I think everything is pretty much clear. And if everything is clear, then we can definitely connect tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining the session. See you tomorrow. Take care.